That's the usual way it is done, so I have to say a few words about Enrico Letta. Enrico Letta started as an academic and then entered in politics in 1998. He was Minister of European Affairs in 1998, Minister of Industry from 1999 to 2001, member of the European Parliament from 2004 to 2009, Secretary of the Council of the Ministers from 2006 and 2008. Then he served as Prime Minister of Italy from 2013 to 2014. And then he went back to academia. So in 2014, he became Dean of the Paris School of International Affairs at Sciences Po. And today he is the president of the Institut Jacques Delors and member of the Italian Chamber of Deputies. As you know, in 2023, he received a mandate from the European institution to elaborate a high-level report on the future of the single market, and we are thrilled to hear from him about his report and his policy recommendation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure for me to be here. I'll try to give you some introductory remarks, and I think the best way then is to discuss and to exchange on these remarks on the topic of the single market. As you said, the European Council gave me the mandate jointly with the European Commission in September last year. At the same time, they gave a mandate, the European Commission gave the mandate to Mario Draghi to present a broader report on competitiveness. The two worked together. I think I consider my report on the single market precondition of Draghi's report, and he put at the very beginning of his report the consideration that he didn't, I would say, worked on single market, giving for granted the conclusions of my report. Then I presented the report April last spring. The report was presented to the 27 in an extraordinary session of the European Council with a discussion with the 27 and the President of the European Commission, 2 hours exchange. That was very interesting. I will tell you something about the reaction of the prime ministers when I presented the report and the recommendations. Then they asked me to continue working, presenting the report in the different capitals in the 27 and also in the countries that are part of the single market without being part of the European Union, like Norway and so on, Switzerland and Iceland. I decided to run this exercise with a very, I would say, inclusive approach. This is why I'm so happy to have this opportunity today, and I'm also very happy that to know about your activity and your exercises here. And the inclusive method for me was the way, first of all, not to work in a closed doors room at the Berlaymont, but it was the way to go around. This is what I did. I like traveling, so it was not complicated for me. And I learned a lot going around. Visiting the 27, I visited 65 cities. I had more than 400 meetings. I insist on this fact of the 65 cities because that means that it is not just the capitals. And for those who are not Italian here, if you want to understand Italy, please don't limit yourself to stay in Rome. Italy is a country where you need to understand the country mostly out of Rome, and the same for the rest of Europe, if I may say. Capitals are not the best way to understand the entire complexity of the country. This is why I visited many cities, not capital. I presented the report after many discussions, first of all with officials, so government, parliament, with all the European institutions, and of course the DG competition was one of them, but also with stakeholders, with normal citizens, and with academics or experts in in many different universities. I can tell you that for me it was a fantastic experience, and I'm very pleased now to have the opportunity to share the conclusions of this experience. So first point on the method. Second point, the main enemy of exercises like mine is the drawer, because the big risk is that the drawer is the, I would say, the final step of the journey. And of course, I fight to avoid this destiny. And I have to say that I'm very happy because I had the feeling that this time on these topics, there can be some momentum and some important improvement. I say that not for, I would say, a superficial optimism, but because of two reasons. Not only because a general awareness about a momentum of a change that is absolutely needed. But first of all, because von der Leyen took the report and Draghi's report, or Draghi's previews of the report, and she put many references to in the speech that she gave at the European Parliament in July. And on this speech, she had the confidence vote. So it's I would say, a democratic process where it is clear that there's also a support from the European Parliament on this, on many aspects of the report and of Draghi's report. Second, when she organized the first step of the work of the team of the commissioners, she wrote a feuille de route and she gave these mission papers to the 26. And if you read the mission papers, they are very interesting, first of all, because they are very precise. And on these mission papers, the reports are the base of what she asked the 26 to do. So now all the hearing process in the European Parliament commissions will be, first of all, on these topics of the feuille de route with all these aspects. That is, for me, of course, I would say, the big hope not to have the drawer as destiny of the exercise. Third point, of course, I will give you an overview of the report, but I'll try immediately to land on the topics that are related to your 3 days here in Rome. And I'll try, of course, to give you some reasons to discuss on that. The main, the core of the report and the reason why the European institutions asked for a new high-level report on the future of the single market. I say a new because there's the fundamental work that Mario Monti did in 2010 on the future of the single market. Another former Italian Prime Minister. I think there are many reasons. First reason is because we have many former Prime Ministers in Italy. But the other reason is that maybe we are enough pro-European and finding solutions to be, I would say, welcomed by the other and by the European institutions. But why 14 years later another high-level report? And the main reason is the fact that the last 14 years were for one reason or another, first of all because of crises that we had, one after the other. The reason why at that time the President of the Commission asked Mario Monti to write a report were all there on the table. And the reasons at that time were, you remember the date, 2010, we were in the idea of relaunch Europe after the financial crisis. In reality, we were at the first moment of the financial crisis. And so I would say the relaunch was impossible then because we had the second peak of the crisis with the sovereign debt crisis and so on. And then we had all the other crises, like of course, COVID and the war and the rest. And we had all the aspects that were a sort of the single market for many years didn't have many improvement. One of the top examples, I think, is the Capital Markets Union. That is one of the pillars of the single market. It was launched in 2014, and then the biggest crisis, Brexit, was, I think, in my view, one of the reasons why this chapter of the single market wasn't a success, and today we are still there. So just to tell you that the reason why a new report on the future of the single market was all there, with the idea to say, okay, COVID, okay, the war, okay, Brexit, but now we have to plan the future. And planning the future means relaunching the single market for the very simple reason why, without exploiting the hidden gem we have within Europe, and that is not enough exploited, it's impossible to be successful and competitive. It's not just a question to find outside reasons to be strong. We have to find these reasons inside. Then I immediately started planning this journey around the 27, and I had immediately in this exercise, very concrete and not very theoretical exercise, I had the first, I would say, suggestion on why the single market is not working and how to work on overcoming the obstacles we have. And it was a very practical exercise. It was the exercise of planning my journey. In Italy, I would do the same journey by high-speed train. In France, in the 7 years I lived in France, I used to travel by TGV, and the same in all the other European countries. So I tried to say, okay, we go green, we are the smallest continent in the world, so my journey has to be by high-speed train. And I immediately realized that it's impossible to travel connecting the European capitals by high-speed train. There's no network on high-speed train in Europe, but Brussels, Paris, Amsterdam. And it is not because of the lack of high-speed train technology. We have very good high-speed train technology, but we have it only at national level, with investments that are all at national level. There's no connections among countries. And for me, it is emblematic of the entire problem that we have today. It is emblematic for many reasons. We don't have the connections among the countries. We don't have the connections on high-speed train, but the same on energy, for instance, because we have each country alone developing his own energy mix without I would say, right connections among the different countries. So this idea that the single market has a problem, and the main problem is that theoretically, we have the single market. But in reality, we don't have the connections, borders are still there, and the demonstration of the fact that borders are still there is what today in all the newspapers, media, you have in these very days where everyone is discussing about a cross-border merger between banks, a German bank and Italian bank, using this term, cross-borders. That is a non-existing term in theory, because we are within a no-border single market. I wouldn't use this term for a merger between a Tuscan bank and a Sicilian bank. It is not a cross-border merger. It is just a merger. And I say that because we have the borders in our mind. That's the point. And borders are still there, and it's very complicated to fight against borders. So the core of the report is how to try to develop, first of all, the awareness, the general awareness of the fact that the single market is the hidden gem, and we have to recuperate what we didn't do at the beginning of the story of the single market. Because in reality, we discussed about a European single market. When we discuss about the word, we say there are three big players at world level: China, Europe, US. But in reality, Europe, and I will say a few words on that, on many issues is a, I would say, geographical expression. If I take financial markets, if I take telecom markets, if I take energy markets, Europe is a geographical expression. We don't have a European single financial market. We don't have a European single telecom market. We don't have a European single energy market. And why? Because the member states at the very beginning of the story, and I can tell you that my big privilege being president of the Jacques Delors Institute was to be able in the last 8 years to talk with Jacques Delors before he passed away last December, and having his own, I would say, suggestions and his own narrative about how the single market started, with this idea that at the very beginning, member states decided not to integrate the three topics that I mentioned: financial services, telecom markets, and energy. And it was a, I would say, collective shared decision, because the member states at that time were big enough to stay in a competition where China wasn't there, India wasn't there, BRICS weren't there. Italy at that time was big as the sum of India and China in economic terms. 60 million people, Italy, 3 billion, China and India together. So what happened at that time, it was that the world was completely different, and the big European member states were big enough to stay in a competition where the national dimension was the right dimension. Now, 35 years later, and this is the core of the report, the national dimension is a ceiling, is no more a boost, as it was 30 or 35 years ago. It is a ceiling, and we have to break this ceiling. In the last 15 years, we didn't have any big cross-border merger in Europe, in any big sector. So the national ceiling is reached in all the big sectors, and we are not able, or we don't have the fight, the goodwill, you use the term you prefer, to overcome this ceiling. And we know that this ceiling is becoming the coffin of the European competitiveness, because it's too small. it is just too small. And if we continue with the idea that, and the Italo-German deal on banks today is a very good test, if we continue with the idea that the national dimension is the ceiling, I think the lack of competitiveness of Europe will be our destiny. And today this lack of competitiveness is linked, to, first of all, to the three sectors that I mentioned. And the three sectors, of course, they have consequences on many others. If I mention the role of financial services, the lack of a European single financial service dimension is the reason why we are losing investments, competitiveness. Investments are going to the US. The dimension of the big US investment banks is there to demonstrate that we are not playing the same championship with them. All the transactions, digital transactions that are happening in Europe among us, among European consumers on the European ground, are mediated by American platforms. And there are each digital transaction we have, I would say, brings a fee to New York. We can have the choice between the three, but all the three are Americans, and the fees are going there. And for transactions that are happening within the European ground, among European consumers, and I think it's the demonstration of what I'm saying. The fragmentation is bringing us to the irrelevance. This is exactly what is happening on the financial sector in comparison with the US. The big amount of savings that are leaving Europe to go to the US, because the US market is more attractive, because it is bigger. NASDAQ is like all the European stock exchanges together, twice, doubled. Is the demonstration of something that happened in the last 20 years, and we weren't able to run as fast as them because we didn't want to integrate. This is for financial markets, this is for telecom. Figures on telecom are absolutely clear. And this is for energy. We applied a rule of the competition rules within a market and within European markets, where we applied this rule, first of all, to the national markets, keeping the national markets national, without the idea of being in a European market. And I think I don't want to blame any of the, I would say, European competition commissioners. They did their job. The problem is the general architecture, and the general architecture is the fact that we didn't build up a European single market. And I think today the big challenge we have is considering that this national dimension is becoming the ceiling of our competitiveness. We have to move from 27 telecom markets to one telecom market. We have to move from 27 financial markets to one financial market. We have to be, and this is the core of my proposals. I have three roadmaps on the three topics, all without treaty changes, not because I am convinced that Europe is the perfect world today without treaty changes, but because I'm pragmatic. And I know that opening a Pandora box of treaty changes discussions today would bring us in a mess. We need to be very pragmatic, and we need to be very fast, because the other thing that I would say unify my report and Draghi's report is this idea of a red alarm. Europe is losing ground, and not for conjunctural reasons. We had just now the figures of the collapse of our industrial growth in the last 12 months is everywhere in Europe is a disaster. We are losing ground, we are losing competitiveness. And I think one of the main problems is that we continue to fight with this national dimension that is not the right one. I know very well that it's very complicated. And I know very well that we have to apply, and this is my final part of my presentation, I know very well that we have to apply creative ideas. Because I know very well, I would say very frankly that I know that Europe can't be like the US. I don't want to propose for Europe the American model. Europe is a union with 27, histories, traditions, legacies, and we have to keep together the two levels, the national level and the European level. But there are, for instance, some of them that are, in my view, working. For instance, for me, it's absolutely incredible that today we reached the total integration in the most difficult, in emblematic and symbolic terms, field, the currency. We have the same currency in our wallets. And we know very well that the currency is the most emblematic, symbolic, term of sovereignty. We have the same currency. The euro today is accepted. 75% of European citizens following the Eurobarometer are today happy with the euro. Nobody is thinking like in the last 2 decades that euro is a disaster. I was in Sweden during this trip. I don't know if someone is from Sweden here, but I was surprised. I didn't open the topic of the Swedish accession to the euro. But the people, the government, parliaments, experts told me that they were discussing about it, the Swedish accession to Swiss accession is it's a long journey to the euro. So just to say, we have the euro, and the euro is a success. It works also because we have a central bank, and this central bank didn't eliminate the national central bank. We have a complex but working system with Frankfurt at the center and the central bank, the national central bank, and it works. And I think we have to move towards a similar system in the other sectors. The proposal I put on the table is to have a similar system, for instance, on financial market, with a good, balance of powers between the 27 CONSOB and the ESMA. A good balance of power on the telecom side, on the energy side, knowing that there are many differences among the different sectors. On the energy side, we have to know, of course, that there's a treaty article that is guaranteeing member states to have their own, energy mix, and it is not the case in the other systems. But the problem is there is a problem of interconnections. So my final point, my conclusion on competition is the fact that I want to tell you frankly, take it easy. I'm not among those who want to kill competition. I'm a very pro-competition guy. I would like to have an evolution of the European system towards a European single market where competition can be guaranteed at the European level in the different regions, but considering the European dimension and not just the national one. Because if we consider just the national one, take the telecom system, we have this incredible number of 70, 80 operators in Europe with 4 or 5 operators in very small countries without the possibility for them to to invest and to have the. I think we have to consider that we have to defend the consumer of today, but also the consumer of tomorrow. And the consumer of today, for instance, in the telecom system in Europe is happy. Do we think that the consumer of tomorrow will be happy too if we continue like that? I don't think so. Because we lost all ground on that topic because of the fragmentation. We don't have, I would say, an industry at the level of having the right investments. And we still have a system on these topics where the fragmentation is, I would say, driving Europe to be a colony, an American colony or a Chinese colony. That's it. And we think that the European consumer won't be very happy to be in America, in an American colony or in a Chinese colony. So my guess on these points is that I'm not, we say, in the report you'll find all the proposals. I don't want to be too technical here, but the key guess is to say we have to move from 27 to 1, and we have to guarantee the competition rules at this one European level. And if we do so, we are able to protect the consumers, and we are able to, I would say, to give a boost to the European industry, considering that is the European playground that is the most important one, and not just the national one. The national one is too little to fight at world level. And I think this is the main political problem today, in a moment in which the instinct is always to come back to the national dimension, the national flag, the national language, and so on and so forth. And we need to have a European Union and European institutions leading towards decisions and, I would say, capacity to get results there, considering that all these proposals are not ideological proposals for, I would say, the European flag beating the national flags. I know very well that the role of national flags is important and will continue to be important in Europe. We have to combine the two, and today we have the European flag in difficulty in fields, financial markets, I repeat, telecom and energy are there not by chance. If you take into consideration that the two main terms of the next Commission, the two main missions will be around two words, and the two words are competitiveness and security. And if we discuss about security, is it possible to have security without having strong energy independence, without having a strong financial single market in Europe, being able to have a strong connectivity European system and not lagging behind as we are lagging behind? All these topics, of course, can bring me to continue in many directions, discussing on innovation, the idea of the fifth freedom that I put in the report, or discussing on cohesion policies, or discussing on mobility of the people. But I wanted to give you I would say, the soul of the report, the ideas that are at the center of this exercise, and I would be more than happy to discuss with you on all of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for this presentation, introduction of your report. Before I give the floor to the audience, I exploit the privilege of sitting here. So I would like to ask you, you mentioned that there is a window of opportunities now. So there is some willingness to intervene to create a true single market in many industries. But who are the enemies? Who are fighting against, who are opposing, and what we can do to overcome this opposition?
I think the main problem is inertia. The main problem is inertia, because there's an inertia that goes today towards the national dimension in terms of protection. We think that the national dimension is the best way to protect towards all the obstacles we have today. The second point is misunderstandings on many topics. One of them is on competition. If we have a fight within the European system among those pushing in the direction that I wrote in my report or Draghi wrote in his report, and if we have resistances, pro-European resistances, on the idea to say the true interpreters of the European values are those who think that on competition we have to keep the situation as it is today without any changes, I think that is a big obstacle, because I think we are going all in the same direction. The main point is considering that the world has changed. And the word of today is such a big word where it's absolutely necessary to consider that the dimension of our companies, that is, I would say, the outcome of internal competition. I don't think that the dimension comes from a protection. The dimension comes from a success in a competitive environment. But at the same time, if the environment is a national one at 27 levels, and of course the Americans will win and the Chinese will win. It is for sure. I made many examples before. I can continue on these examples, but I think the geographical and the economical environment and the dimension of this environment is absolutely crucial. And of course, third obstacle, I think we have the obstacles of those who are on board, I would say, trying to break and trying to not to go towards more integration. But why I'm optimistic? Because I always remember one joke of Jacques Delors that always told me that, remember that I created successfully the single market as the most pro-European leader at that time in a close tie, in a close alliance with the most anti-European leader at that time, that was Margaret Thatcher. Because the single market, as we all know, was an alliance between the Commission and the UK. And it was a great success. Another reason of the stupid, totally crazy choice of the UK to leave the European Union. Because they, I would say, they played a fantastic role when they were in. And I think we are missing them. But my point is about this third point. I think on many of these subjects, we can work also with some of those who are not enthusiastic integrationists, but thinking that we can't continue like that. Because if we continue like that, there's one leverage that we can use. It is not part, I think it's not part of your first focus, but one of the leverage is defense. And is defense in broader terms, but also defense industry. And I always use this figure that is for me très parlant, is the figure of the expenditures on defense that we had in the last 2 years and a half, where we helped the Ukrainians, and it was good, and we have to continue helping the Ukrainians. We spent 140 billion euros to buy military furnitures. This money came from European taxpayers. So we spent 140 billion euros to buy military furnitures to give these military furnitures to the Ukrainians, and because of the fragmentation of our defense industry, 80% of this 140% was to buy non-EU military furnitures. So because of the fragmentation of our defense system, defense industry, we made happy the governor of Michigan, the governor of Pennsylvania, the mayor of Seoul, and the governor of Anatolia, because the three countries, South Korea, Turkey, and the US. And the US didn't do the same, because for them, same amount of money, 88% to buy US military furniture, so to have jobs creation in Pennsylvania and so on. I think this point is very strong. If we continue having our national flags very high, we will make happy Wall Street, the Chinese, the Indians, the BRICS, and the others, and we will lose jobs. So I think these topics can be very, very strong and very convincing also for those who are not so ideological for a European integration.
First question from Alberto Pera, okay, who's the president of the Italian Antitrust Association. So I invite you all then to state your name and affiliation.
Well, I want to thank, first of all, Enrico Letta for his presentation and for his report. I think that most of us would definitely agree with the content and the outline you gave us. I just wanted to see it from not the competitors' point of view, from the competition point of view. That's the last point you mentioned. Because I think that Jacques Delors, you quoted the single market. The single market was a great success. It was a great success in a context in which increased competition, and the effect has been that a lot of European companies are very important on the world market. Now we forget it because there's the digital sector and so on where we are backward, but there are a lot of industrial companies. Even the crisis of the car sector, it's because the car sector has been very important in the world. Deutsche Telekom is the third company in the world, but so the single market was a success. But there is the problem of the application of competition law in a market in certain areas of the European economy, and those are exactly the areas where the single market has not been completed. Exactly the energy market, the telecommunication market. Deutsche Telekom, which is the third company in the world, doesn't operate in all the 27 countries. Actually, it operates only in a few ones. And then, obviously, the capital markets, the banking union, which are projects which have been completed. Now, in a fragmented market of this kind, there is a problem of application of competition law, as you mentioned. In a European market, the problem of relation between application of competition law and size of the companies becomes less important. Actually, you may have very large companies operating in these sectors which compete among themselves and which generate the benefits that competition produces. So I think that the message that you have in the report is very pro-competitive in a sense. And even if getting to this result, this obviously implies issues which are regulatory, first of all, and of public intervention. Think of infrastructures in the energy sector. This is something which requires probably a lot of private capital, but a lot of help for having the development of these infrastructures. So compliments what you did.
Thank you, Alberto. Your intervention brings me to add one point. That is, it is crucial to have a big push from the top. if we don't have a big push from the top, it will be impossible to succeed on that, for a very simple reason that on the ground, some small states at the European level, they have the interest to keep the situation as it is today, for instance, on financial sectors, because they have some individual gains from the present situation. But these individual gains are absolutely minimal if we consider the general gains that we would have in case of global integration of our market. The individual gains of some small member states are there because of the lack of competitiveness at world level of the entire system. And I think we need, from the top, to have strength, determination, and to be able to, I would say, to be very focused on the need, and of course, very creative. I mentioned some aspect on, because the supervisory, architecture is one of the most complicated issues. I can tell you that I never thought in my journey to have so many prime ministers telling me that, but I agree with you, your design is good, your scenario, I like it, but how can I go to my voters to tell them we will merge our stock exchange with a European stock exchange, to merge our supervisory authority, national supervisory authority on financial markets, with a European system. They will interpret this as, I would say, losing ground of our national strength. And I think this is the key point. At the end of the day, it's more a political problem rather than a technical problem. But the political problem, in my view, is very, very complex. This is why we need a big push from top, but I think from the expert side also. This is why I wanted to give you this message very clearly. We have to avoid a big misunderstanding thinking that we go in different directions on these topics. We are all going in the same direction on how to improve competitiveness, improving competition, but considering that the world has changed. When the single market was created, Germany wasn't reunificated, Soviet Union was still there. We were half of the member states of today. China and India weren't there. BRICS weren't there. That was the word of the single market. And today things are completely changed. So the need to have a change is absolutely there.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stefan Sagebro. I'm from the Confederation of Swedish Enterprise. So you have a Swede in the room, indeed. The euro is indeed up for debate in Sweden, since the Swedish krona took a hit during these crises, for sure. So you're absolutely right about that. I wanted to ask you about the thing that you mentioned on the defense area and the bi-European discussion that has been arising there. What is your stand on that and bi-European desires in general? Isn't there a risk that if you start to limit how companies can source, that they also maybe lose competitiveness if they can't source from where it is most efficient globally? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you also for the contributions and the big support that I received from your country and also I visit many times Stockholm. I was at the Ericsson headquarters many times. So they told me that I'm the most Scandinavian Italian. The point on defense, I think, has some issues. First of all, there's a very much expected third report. The Commission asked the former Finnish President of the Republic, Niinistö, to write a report on defense. So I think we are waiting for this report. My point is there are two different levels. First level is the level of political agreements among leaders of not the 27, because the industry of defense is in 7 countries. Sweden is one of them. So we need to have an agreement among these countries to say, okay, now stop building 12 type of helicopters. We need to build in Europe 1 helicopter. Stop. And we do it together. It's the only way. It's the only way. This is what the Americans do. And it comes not from treaty changes. It comes from political agreements. I don't think we will never have mergers in the I would say immediate time or in the next period, but we need to have common programs. That would be immediately a great result. Then there's a second topic. The second topic is how to finance. The frugals are today against the idea to have a new next generation EU in general terms. But we need to put together the way in which we finance. And first of all, on defense, we can use the fact that the frugals are those who want to put money together and to use some examples there. So I think there are some proposals. There's a very good proposal that Kaja Kallas, when she was Prime Minister of Estonia, put on the table. There's a proposal from former Commissioner Thierry Breton. I put some proposals in the report. I add one proposal that is not immediately for Sweden, but Sweden can join, is the proposal to use the ESM. The ESM is for the Euro countries, as you know, but the ESM, il famigerato MES for the Italian, is a very interesting, crazy European story, because the ESM is there. I visited the Luxembourg headquarters. There's a fantastic team running the ESM. Because of the lack of Italian ratification for incomprehensible reasons, the ESM is there without any possibility to move, full of money. So my idea is very simple. The ESM is for urgencies, emergencies, and Russian aggression to Ukraine is an emergency. So the idea is to say we use the ESM and the money that are there to finance common projects and to finance all these projects. It can be an embryo of a potential common activity on how to finance defense together. And of course, there's the fourth point that is on the Stability Pact. I think we need to think about it because it's another important point.
Okay, Andrea Pezzoli.
For two short questions.
Very, very short. Andrea Pezzoli from the Italian Competition Authority. I would like to thank you because your presentation was extremely clear on two crucial points from my point of view. The first one, that you stressed that, competition policy is not just a constraint or even an obstacle, as somebody thinks, for competitiveness. It's something more, it's a complementary tool. Secondly, the second point is that both your report and Draghi's report stress quite clearly that the first building block for competitiveness is the implementation of the single market. And on this point, you were extremely clear, and I think that we need clarity on this point, because even in some of the two, let's say, being clear, in Draghi's report, there might be some internal inconsistency. For instance, talking about telecommunication. There is a sort of, it would be nice if the competition authorities could implement competition rules thinking of wider geographical markets, just by decree. I mean, if the markets are still national, I think that it is not enough to, wish that they might be wider. So, on this point, I think that we have to be clear, otherwise, consolidation could be a bad consolidation, and it would be not particularly useful for competitiveness.
I thank you for your point, because I totally share this point. And I think it's the usually bad behavior of politicians, I would say, to tell officials or people in the Commission are responsible because they are bureaucrats or because they are... we need to consider that we need to move from 27 single markets to one single market and to apply competition rules there. But I think Draghi is totally agree on this, in agreement with this point, and we are working together on that. But on this point, we need to have a political will and to have a political improvement at the European level. So I hope to have it. I strongly hope to have it. But there, I think your role is very important. Your role is very important because it's important to urge our leaders. This is what I said to all the entrepreneur associations, trade union associations around Europe. You have to push your national leaders to consider that these improvements are not the way to give up on the national flag. It's the way to, we say, to improve our competitiveness, and that is absolutely necessary to do it.
Cesare Rizza, I'm a lawyer in Rome. Thank you very much for sharing your vision about a future policy of your single market integration. I would like to have your point of view on the old single market, if you wish, the current market as was established in 1992, and the role of the European Commission, because as we know in the architecture of the treaty, it has a key role with the infringement procedures to make sure member states comply with the rules. And as we know, this is not happening. After 30 years, member states still go on adopting legislative, administrative measures which are completely running afoul of the single market rules. And as a lawyer, I must say it's quite frustrating sometimes to advise clients to go and make a complaint to the European Commission, because the experience we have is that we interact with the technical level of the European Commission, and they're very prepared people, they understand the problems, they also sympathize with the complainant, but then the political level doesn't give the trigger, and sometimes these files tend to stay idle for months or years. How do we overcome this problem with the current enforcement of the European Commission, in your view? Thank you.
We have to create an environment, a friendly environment, on the idea that the Commission, part of the role of the Commission is to be the bad cop. And in life, in daily life, we need to have bad cops. And if the Commission plays only the role of the good cop, we miss a point. So I think we have to ask the Commission to play both, the bad cop and the good cop. And to help the Commission to do so, we need also to move on some issues. In the report, I take a position that is complicated, I know, but for me it's also coming from my experience. I was Minister for the Single Market in my country years and years ago. We have to move definitely from directives to regulations. If you ask me, tell me one thing in 30 seconds, is this one. We have to move from directives to regulations. There's too big room for national, not very, I would say, innocent maneuvers with directives. And you know very well what I mean, and the Italians know very well what I mean. And we need to have regulations. Big discussion, big fight, some derogations if it is necessary, but then once it's decided, we create the level playing field for all, without all this ring fencing and gold plating that is the rule today because of what you said. That will help the Commission to play his role, to play the role also of the backup when it's necessary.
Okay, last question.
Yeah. Alan Riley, College of Europe. My question is about defence procurement, and I totally accept what you're saying. We need a much more integrated market for defence. The problem, I think, is when you talk about sort of 7 industries and looking at the American model, there are problems with the American model. And my understanding in the United States is that there's a lot of criticism, which we even get from the US Department of Defense, that the over-concentration in the US market has resulted in like 6 or 7 players when perhaps in 1990 where there were 30 to 40 players, as a result of which you get another problem, which is the over-concentration has created an issue of quality of product and, in fact, high prices, which creates its own problems. So one of the questions I have is, how do we create a system which allows us, particularly where you've got lots of potential state financing coming in, to ensure that we don't create new problems, we replicate the American problems. You could argue the American problems are a luxury to have, but they're still something that we wouldn't want.
I confess that your question is too complicated for my knowledge of the system of defense procurement. Can tell you that the main issue today we have, and the big difference is the fact that defense, we can't consider defense as a single market. That's my point. This is why I mentioned in my previous intervention 3 topics, and all my narrative is 3+1. 3+1 is financial services, energy, telecom, the 3+1, which is defense. I don't put them in the same basket for a very simple reason that I think even theoretically is too much to say that single market for defense. This is why in the report I name it common market for defense, because the defense market is a captive market in some way, if I'm not wrong. So it's a market where you have a buyer, when you have the role of the state is so crucial and so important. So is a different point, and this is why I think it's necessary to consider differently, and also because we have a different constitutional coverage. Defense is mostly national for many aspects in Europe, and we have to consider it. So this is why I mentioned to the previous answer to the previous question that the cooperation among the political leaders and political agreements are maybe more important than changes in the rules, because it is a point where the cooperation among countries is absolutely essential. Let me end up with an advertising moment, because I decided not to limit this exercise to the report, but I decided that the journey and the tale of the journey could be interesting. And so I wrote a book, and the book is out in Italian, but it will be out in French and in Spanish in the next weeks. And the book has the same name of the report, so much more than a market, of course, translated in the different languages. Not in French, because they told me that the name market in a French book is not a big way to sell. So in French, the name will be Des idées nouvelles pour l'Europe. That sounds more gently. But just to tell you that in reality, it is part of the exercise. I don't think that the single market integration is just a matter for experts. And maybe it was too much a matter for experts in the past. It is the life of citizens. And if we don't have the support of citizens there are many aspects that we didn't have the time to discuss today on the role of citizens in the single market, but I strongly wanted to put and to emphasize the role of citizens and the role of the single market for the people, because otherwise all the achievement that we discussed this morning, we won't be able to reach them, and the fact to have the possibility to, I would say, to discuss it among citizens in public debates on the ground, and for me is as important as a discussion with very distinguished experts as you are here gathering in Rome in this beautiful Roman weather. Thank you, and of course enjoy Rome in these very days.
Thank you so much, Professor Letta. Of course, having a rich program has drawbacks, so no matter how interesting the topic is, we have to move on and to the next session. Thank you so much.